Look at this photo. If you have the files downloaded, you can use this file and it works really well. Facial hair JPEG. Here's a guy that we've got, just the stock photography photo that we've got here. And yeah, here we go. The problem is he's got some bald spots. He's got some areas that could be a little thicker, things going on here. And hey, let's see if we can help him out a little bit, okay? Poor guy. So what we want to do is we actually want to create a hairbrush and actually add facial hair to this guy. Not a big deal. Actually quite simple. So let's zoom in. I'm going to take this and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I want to zoom right in on my photo here. And you can see, let's take a look, let's examine this a little bit. Facial hair like this, they kind of go a little bit here and there. We've got darker hairs, we've got some highlights, we've got some lighter hair. Facial hair is all just not one color, just like your hair in your head. It's not all the same. And to move around inside this photo, I'm going to hold down the space bar to get the hand, and we can take a look at some of the other areas that are going on here. There's some areas that are needing some repair, but we're going to focus mostly on this area right here because he's got some problems right here. So let's try to help him out. So what I want to do is I'm going to go to my layers panel. And you notice when we open up the photo, it's the only layer in the image. So we're going to come down to the bottom, and we are going to, I'm going to move this up a little bit so we can see what's going on. I'm going to add a new layer. Okay? So I got one blank layer on top of my photo that we're working with. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to grab the brush, and I have the leaf because that happens to be the last brush I was in. I'm going to come down here and grab a hard edge brush. I want to make sure the hardness is up to 100%. Now look, when I bring my brush over here, that brush is huge. Like, no good. Undo. And the fact that we want to make sure that we have a black brush. We're going to create a black brush because when we make a brand new brush, what do we have to have? Grayscale or black and white. So let's hit D on the keyboard, or if you see the little black and white box above the color swatch. So if I click on this, make it a color. But then down here, click on that two little boxes right above the little miniature foreground background. It drops you back to default colors. Default colors in Photoshop are black foreground, white background. So the other problem we have here is this brush is absolutely mammoth. So I'm going to come up here, go to my brushes panel again, and I'm going to drop the size down. Let's say to let's see. Come over here. What do we got? 12 pixels. Ooh, still too big. So going back and forth is going to be crazy. So I'm just going to come over here on my screen, and I am going to use my left and right bracket and get my brush size down to a nice little situation like that. Then we're going to draw. Now, here's the deal. When we're creating a brush like this, you are not going to get it right every single first time. So I don't like that one. It's close, but it's not exactly what I want. So I'm going to do an undo and draw a little bit more. Don't like that. Draw. That's not too bad. I'm going to drop it down. We're at 1 pixel brush here, so that looks pretty good. See, that's a little bit of it may be just a little too long. There we go. Look at that. Nice little curve. Just keep undoing or doing it until you get it where you like it. All right. You're not going to get it perfect, and that's okay. But try to do the best you can. You can see that he's got all kinds of different length in the facial hair that's going on here, and that right now is on its own layer. So what I want to do next is I want to define my brush. So to define my brush, I have to have black on a white background. So I can't really define it from here, because if I do, it'll define all kinds of stuff and cause a mess because everything's not in black and white. So what I'm going to do here is on the keyboard, I'm going to hold down the Command or Control key and click on the new layer icon, because look, I am highlighted on layer 1, which is above the background layer. If I just click on the new layer icon, it's going to make layer 2 above layer 1, which is fine. We can take that and drag it below that. But that's not, I'm going to just show you a little tip here. If I'm on layer 1, instead of clicking on the new layer icon, dragging it below, I'm going to save myself a little step. I love this little thing. Again, you do not have to do this. This is only if you like this thing. I love keyboard shortcuts. If it makes my life faster and easier in Photoshop, I'm using it. So on the Mac, I'm going to hold down the Command key or the Control, and I'm going to click on the new layer icon. And look at that. It adds layer 2 to my layers panel underneath layer 1. So basically it saved me a step. Instead of putting layer 2 above layer 1 and then going over here manually dragging it down, I've got one right below it. That's what I need, because I need a layer below it. I need to be on that layer that's below this layer, because that layer 1 is the hair. See? Turn it off, turn it on. There it is. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab the rectangular marquee tool from the toolbar. And I'm going to come over here and I am going to create a rectangle around my brush that I just made. The hair that I just made. Notice that's on layer 1. This is layer 2. If I turn off layer 2, nothing happens because there's nothing on there. But layer 2 is active. That's the layer that I have the active selection on. I'm going to go up underneath Edit, Fill, and I'm going to fill that rectangle with white. You come in here and you can say, oh, I can fill it with the background color, or I'm going to fill it with white and hit OK. So now look, I have a white rectangle with the facial hair on top of it. Pretty cool, right? Very, very simple. So then, now that I have a selection and I have the stroke in there for the brush, I am going to come up underneath Edit, Define Brush Preset. That's going to bring it up. Look at that. There it is, a little hair, and it's going to call it Sampled Brush 1, and we're going to call it Facial Hair. And if you want, you can make several of them and go back and forth with this. But right now I'm just going to do one. We're going to say OK. And we're going to turn all those off. Come down here and I'm going to make a brand new layer above that. Because now, and I'm deselecting. I'm going to Control D and I'm going to deselect. Turn that off. And now I've got a layer above the background layer. Nothing on it, correct? Grab my brush. Click in here and come right down to the bottom and boom, there is my facial hair brush. So if I paint, see what happens? All the brush dynamics and everything are turned off. So I'm going to undo that. And I can change the size of the brush, left bracket, right bracket. I'm going to drop that right down. Come over here to my brushes panel. Shape dynamics here. Come in there and I'm going to shape dynamics. And you can see there's my brush. So I'm going to change the size jitter quite a bit. Actually, I'm going to move it all the way up to 100%. Because what I want it to do is I want it to change quite a bit because it's going to be facial hair. Angle jitter, we're going to bump that way up. Like so. Diameter, we're going to move that up. And then the roundness jitter, we're going to move that up a little bit because, again, all these facial hairs are not all the same. Scattering, here's where we need to really scatter this out. Right? So you can see now I've got too much jitter on there, so I'm going to go back, Shape Dynamics, and I'm going to say the angle jitter is just a little too much. Bring that back around. And again, once you start playing with these, you go to scattering, and then you can see how it's going on. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, when you're working in this panel, you've got to make sure if you just click on like a button, the box with the checkbox, you don't get the controls unless you're actually on it. Okay? So right now I'm going to turn that off. We'll go back to scattering, and we're going to change the count up a little bit, and the count jitter around. And we're going to open up the jitter, the scatter a little bit. And then we're going to go down to transfer. And we're going to transfer the opacity jitter a little bit because things are going to change. And it's starting to look pretty good. So let's try it out. Whoa, looking pretty good. We're getting there, okay? So I'm going to undo that. And right now I'm kind of happy. But notice when I paint, okay, we are getting a lot of black. We don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab our eyedropper tool here. And I'm going to move around inside my image, and I'm going to find some of this color. I'm going to go, oh, there's the, a little darker, I think. Keep clicking until I finally get something that's a little darker. If not, there's a brown. We'll make that a little darker, bring that down a little bit. There we go. I'm going to go to the background color. Come out here and try to grab a lighter color like so. And now we've got a little bit of a difference. So when we come back in here to the brush, and we go to the scattering, back to the transfer and color dynamics. So let's go to the color dynamics, and we're going to change the hue jitter, not so much. Foreground, background, we're going to bump that up a little bit. Let's drop the hue jitter down quite a bit, and let's try it. Okay, not too dark. So let's jump that up. And I need to go with a darker color. So let's go back. So let's go with our foreground color and make that a dark brown, almost to the range of black. Okay, so you click on the color picker and bring that up. And now, scattering. Let's take that jitter down a little bit. Take that, make sure that's up. Angle jitter, don't want the angle jitter. Scattering. And take the count down to 1. Okay? So that's a little better. Now let's try it. Look at that. So let's try zooming out a little bit. And we're going to do a little painting. And we are going to give him a whole lot more facial hair. Now, that's all great. That's looking pretty good. We're actually working it. But now let's come in here and let's change this around a little bit and paint a little bit of lighter. And look at that. We get some highlights and things that are happening. Switch that around again. And I want to paint in a little more up in here. And ladies and gentlemen, we've got ourselves... Oh, and look at that now. See how over here? Let's zoom in a little bit. When I paint over here, the hair is not going the right direction. So I'm going to undo that. So we're going to go back to the brush tip, shapes. And here's the circle right here. So let's turn this. Like so until we get it to go the right direction. And we're going to paint a little bit in here. Like so. So we have done quite a bit to improve this gentleman's facial hair. Now he's a little more manly, right? Okay, so if we did some on the mustache up here, we'd have to change the direction. You can have a lot of fun with this. Change the color of the brush, go back and forth. You could make him into Grizzly Adams if you wanted to. So again, brushes are extremely powerful, extremely flexible. You can have a ton of fun, and I hope this shows you that you can do some neat things with the brushes and